Greetings everyone. So it's happened. Hungary has done it. They have passed a law banning gay pride marches. And it just goes to show that it can be done. Obviously there are many countries in Europe, specifically Western Europe, where we just can't see that kind of thing happening. But it's happened in Hungary. Perhaps it can happen in Poland as well with the right leadership. The USA, I'm not so sure. It would be tricky. But let's have a look at this news article about this change in the law that took place in Hungary. I'm going to read you some of this article by AP News, because AP News are supposed to be a news agency, Associated Press, right? They're like Reuters. They're supposed to be news agencies where they just give you raw news, and then other media outlets have a deal with them where they pay them a certain amount of money to be able to access their raw news, and then they use that and then they spin it however they want to make it more left-leaning, more right-leaning. But the news agencies were generally thought to be just straight down the line hard news. They weren't trying to spin it one way or another, or at least that's what we thought. But then, of course, when I read through some of this article for you, you'll realize that actually that's not true. They are absolutely left-wing, and you can tell by the way they write the article. So the article, with the title, Hungary passes constitutional amendment to ban LGBTQ plus public events, seen as a major blow to rights. Even there in the title you can see it. This is a major blow to rights, just to people's rights in general. And then we move on to the actual piece. From Budapest, Hungary's parliament passed an amendment to the constitution that permits the government to ban public events by LGBTQ plus communities. A decision that legal scholars and critics call another step toward authoritarianism by the populist government. Yeah, that isn't biased at all. What about the legal scholars and critics who don't see it that way? Maybe you can mention them. No, you're just going to mention that legal scholars and critics say this is authoritarianism or a step towards it. The amendment that required a 2/3 majority, and this is overwhelming, it really is, passed along party lines with 140 votes for and 21 against. That is overwhelming. Almost 7 times more votes for this than against it. Although I'm not really that in-depth into Hungarian politics, it seems as though a lot of politicians there actually have some kind of moral backbone, and they're not completely spiritually bankrupt. Later on it says, ahead of the vote, the final step for the amendment, opposition politicians and other protesters attempted to blockade the entrance to a parliament parking garage. It's interesting because you hear a lot about threat to democracy, and it's usually aimed against the right. And yet here, when left-wing people and liberals literally try to block politicians entering the government building by, I suppose, preventing them from being able to get into the parliament parking garage, that isn't seen as a threat to democracy. We don't see threat to democracy written here in this article or in any other mainstream media article. And this is the part that I really like about this amendment. It says the amendment declares that children's rights to moral, physical and spiritual development supersede any right other than the right to life, including that to peacefully assemble. And here we go again, Hungary's contentious child protection legislation, in quotations, as if to say it isn't really child protection. No, really, it's child protection. That's what it is. And the only reason you put that in air quotes is because you're left-wing. You betray your readers, pretending, lying that you're this straight down the middle news agency when you're clearly not. So as I said, Hungary's contentious child protection legislation, or as I'm just going to call it, Hungary's child protection legislation, prohibits the depiction or promotion of homosexuality to minors under the age of 18. And here's the thing about these gay pride marches. They really are horrific to look at. So many of them have so many despicable things. You have people there with all kinds of inflated and rubber genitalia. You have people there dressed as gimps, some of them dressed as these weird kind of dog gimps on leashes, and just this generally strange stuff that goes on in these very adult marches. And people take their kids along to this. For some reason, people think it's appropriate for their children to be wandering around among some of these really weird, creepy, depraved people. And I know that a lot of gay people, or people who identify as gay, are against this march as well, these marches. They don't like them. They also think that they are inappropriate for children. They're embarrassed by them. They're rather they didn't happen, and they say they've never been to one and they never want to go to one. So it isn't just people who are conservative, people who are right-wing, people who are Christians who have a problem with this. And by the way, it wouldn't just be Christians when it comes to religion. It would be Christians, Muslims and Jews who would be against this. But it's just people who have normal common sense and decency and think this is outrageous. People shouldn't be doing this in public. Much like somebody, if they walk around naked in public, they'll get arrested. That's indecent exposure. You can't do that. And that law is probably in place also because we know that children walk around in public and you shouldn't be showing them this kind of stuff. So it's well and good to talk about this as a right, that people should be able to do these things. But actually, there are plenty of other things, as I just mentioned, with nudity. And there are nudists around that you can't do. And nudists could complain and say, well, they're nudists. They wish to walk around naked. And you have a law preventing this from being possible. And yet you don't see too many people complain about that or saying that some kind of human right is being violated because a nudist can't walk around showing their bits and pieces. So well done, Hungary. What a great step in the right direction. And once again, if that's the kind of lifestyle you want to lead, you're free to do it. They haven't banned you from doing that in Hungary. They're not going to enter into your house and check who you're spending time with there alone. They're just saying publicly, you don't get to do these kind of things because the children have to be protected and they shouldn't be exposed to this kind of thing. It's actually funny because the leader of the ruling Fidesz-KDNP coalition said that this was going to be an Easter cleanup. He was quoted as saying it was going to be an Easter cleanup. It wasn't just this. There are some other laws as well against foreign nationals and things, people who are part of groups posing as NGOs and things like that. Basically things that are very anti-Hungarian that seem to be coming into Hungary. They've put in some laws against that as well. The wheels were kind of set in motion for this actually in March. It says the amendment codifies a law that was fast-tracked through Parliament in March that bans public events held by LGBTQ plus communities, including the popular Pride event in Budapest that draws, or I would say allegedly draws, thousands annually. So it was basically officially voted into law now. Later on it says the new amendment also states that the Constitution recognises two sexes, male and female. The fact that you even have to have this in an amendment is absurd, but there you go. An expansion of an earlier amendment that prohibits same-sex adoption by stating that a mother is a woman and a father is a man. And Poland, I know at the moment the situation isn't amazing over there. There's going to be a presidential election soon, at least at the time of me making this video. And we'll see what happens there. And of course, at the moment, the ruling coalition government in Poland isn't exactly the best option available. So it may not happen that soon in Poland. But, you know, we did have Law and Justice in charge previously, and they didn't push anything like this through. So perhaps they should have while they were in power. And now that chance is gone, temporarily anyway. Folks, let me know what you think of this story. Post your comments underneath this video. Thanks very much for watching.